Good morning. This is your daily briefing from the New York Times, today's headlines for Sunday, August 16, 2026. I'm your host, and we have a packed edition today, 40 stories spanning food safety, geopolitics, the courts, climate, culture, and the quiet lives that shape our world. Let's begin. We start with a story that has been simmering for months, a parasite that slipped through the cracks of America's food safety net and sickened thousands. Cyclospora, a microscopic, single-celled organism that causes intestinal illness, has been linked to outbreaks across the country, and a new investigation by Christina Jewett and Julie Cresswell reveals how the Trump administration delayed a rule last year that could have sped up the effort to pinpoint the source of the contamination. Critics charge that food safety oversight has eroded overall. The reporting takes us to Michigan, where cases of cyclosporiasis were mounting rapidly. State health officials homed in on a common thread: many of those who fell ill had eaten at Taco Bell. On July 1, they asked the company for its supply chain records, crucial information in tracing ingredients that may have caused the outbreak. On July 3, they wrote and asked again. On July 6, a third request. The delays in getting those records, and the broader regulatory delays, meant the trail went cold, and thousands more were exposed. The piece paints a picture of a system where traceability rules have been stalled, where the FDA's ability to mandate electronic record-keeping for high-risk foods has been watered down, and where the burden falls on state labs already stretched thin. It's a story about bureaucracy, yes, but also about the people who spent weeks in hospital beds, and the families who still don't know exactly what made them sick. From the domestic kitchen table, we turn to the Pacific, where the strategic kitchen is heating up. Edward Wong reports from the Philippines, from El Nido, Panglao, and Manila, where Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently visited. The headline: as China pushes to expand in Asia, Trump focuses on Iran. Asian allies are beginning to wonder whether the United States would or could defend them in a war. The worst clashing years between China and the Philippines erupted last month at a long-simmering flashpoint in the South China Sea. For decades, the Philippines has claimed a small reef in disputed waters, rotating troops to a World War II-era ship grounded there to signal control. An international tribunal ruling a decade ago supports the Philippines' claim. But last month, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel began circling the ship, blocking resupply missions, using water cannons and lasers against Philippine vessels. The incident escalated rapidly. Manila invoked the Mutual Defense Treaty with Washington. The Biden administration, and now the Trump administration, has reaffirmed the treaty's application to armed attacks on Philippine forces in the South China Sea. But across the region, in Tokyo, Seoul, Canberra, and Jakarta, the question lingers: if China moves on Taiwan, or seizes a Philippine-occupied feature, will the U.S. actually fight? The focus on Iran, on the nuclear file, on proxy conflicts, consumes bandwidth and military assets. Rubio's trip was meant to reassure. But the subtext, Wong writes, is a region recalibrating, hedging, wondering if the American umbrella still stretches this far. Back in Washington, a legal thread that ties the judiciary to the political furnace. Glenn Thrush reports that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago has spent the past year investigating a Democratic fundraising firm once co-owned by the daughter of Judge Juan Merchan, who conducted the trial that led to Donald Trump's felony conviction in New York. The U.S. Attorney, Andrew S. Boutros of the Northern District of Illinois, directed Authentic Campaigns Incorporated to turn over a broad range of internal communications with clients, including former Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Joe Biden's campaign, and other prominent Democrats. The subpoena, issued last August, sought emails, contracts, and financial records. The investigation appears to focus on whether the firm violated campaign finance laws or made false statements. Merchan's daughter, Lauren Merchan, was a co-owner and president of the firm until 2023. The judge disclosed the connection at the start of the Trump trial. Trump's lawyers moved for recusal, which Merchan denied. Now, the Chicago probe adds a new layer of federal investigation touching the family of the judge who presided over a historic prosecution. The inquiry is ongoing, no charges have been filed. But it feeds a narrative Trump and his allies have pushed, that the legal system is weaponized. The Justice Department says the investigation is independent, predating the Trump trial. Still, the optics are stark. Now we travel to a small country caught in a giant's shadow. Michael Schwartz, Adam Goldman, and Aaron Krolik have produced a Times investigation into Russia's campaign to derail Moldova's pro-Western government. In Moldova, Moscow paid Orthodox priests, conducted a vote-buying scheme, and set up training camps on election interference, all in an effort to derail the Western-leaning government. It resembled in many ways a summer camp, barbecues, beach volleyball, a wellness spa called Relax and Have Fun. But the men and women who attended the program at a resort complex in a remote part of Serbia were there for a different purpose. They were Moldovan politicians, activists, and operatives recruited by Russian intelligence. The curriculum: how to manipulate voter rolls, how to stage protests, how to spread disinformation, how to buy votes, literally, with cash handed out in envelopes. The operation, run by the GRU and the FSB, funneled millions of dollars through a network of shell companies and intermediaries, including the Russian Orthodox Church's Moscow Patriarchate, which paid priests in Moldova to sway their congregations. Moldovan authorities, with Western intelligence support, have documented the scheme in extraordinary detail: wiretaps, financial records, testimony from participants who flipped. The goal: to install a Kremlin-friendly government in Chisinau, halt Moldova's EU accession, and secure a foothold on NATO's eastern flank. Maia Sandu, Moldova's president, has survived the onslaught so far. But the investigation reveals a playbook that is scalable, exportable, and already being tested elsewhere. In India, a different kind of pressure. Anuprita Das reports from New Delhi on young women who joined protests and the hate that followed. Riya Ahir, 27, a Mumbai-based model and actor, went viral after an image circulated of her blocking a police van carrying detained protesters during India's ongoing youth agitation. A vast army of online trolls has stalked her since. They called it a play for attention. They insinuated she sold sexually explicit content behind a paywall on Instagram. They circulated a video of her diving into the sea in a bikini. They flooded her social media accounts with slurs and rape threats. Then came the police visits, not to protect her, but to question her about her protests. Ahir has chosen to rise above it. "You're not scared of someone who was hiding behind a screen," she said. But the pattern is widespread. Women protesters across India, students, farmers, activists, face a dual assault: coordinated online abuse, often amplified by political actors, and offline intimidation from law enforcement. In a patriarchal society, the act of a woman occupying public space, raising her voice, is treated as a transgression. The piece documents how the machinery of harassment works: WhatsApp groups, YouTube channels, right-wing influencers, and how it silences. Some women withdraw. Others, like Ahir, persist. But the cost is measured in anxiety, in self-censorship, in the quiet calculation of whether the next protest is worth the storm. To Cambridge, where a death has left hard questions. Mara Vestendal, Megan Specia, Leo Sands, Ollie Watkins, and Susan Dominus report on Jason Ardai, the school's youngest black professor, found dead on Friday. The school ignored a series of warnings about his life story and his work. When Cambridge University interviewed Ardai for one of the most prestigious sociology positions in the world, he was an early career scholar and underqualified, by the school's own standards. Cambridge's requirements called for an outstanding research record of international stature and a proven successful track record supervising PhD students. Ardai had a modest publication record and had bounced from one university to the next, not staying long enough to oversee a full 3-year doctorate. Yet he was hired. Colleagues raised concerns about gaps in his CV, about claims in his autobiography that didn't align with verifiable facts. The university pressed ahead. Ardai's appointment was celebrated as a milestone for diversity. But behind the scenes, the pressure was immense. He faced scrutiny, isolation, and the weight of representation. His death, the circumstances are still under investigation, has sparked a reckoning at Cambridge about hiring practices, about the burden placed on firsts, about whether institutions use diversity hires as shields rather than investments. The questions are uncomfortable. They remain. We turn to the Pacific again, where Hurricane Lala lashed Hawaii's Big Island but avoided landfall. The storm brought damaging winds and widespread power outages as its eyewall grazed the Big Island's southern tip. The storm's eye remained offshore as it began moving west toward the rest of the island chain. Travelers hunkered down, some leaving hotels early, others waiting out the wind and rain. Riley Ober reports that as Lala neared, visitors scrambled to cope with flight cancellations, broader closures, and the risks of flooding, storm surges, and hurricane-force winds. The Hawaii Department of Transportation closed the 2 busiest airports on the Big Island. Hilo International Airport was in the process of closing Saturday morning. Ellison Onizuka Kona International Airport followed. The storm would be the first hurricane to make landfall on Hawaii in 34 years, except it didn't quite. The eyewall grazed the coast, the center stayed at sea. For residents, it was a reminder of vulnerability. For scientists, a data point in a warming ocean. In Texas, a different kind of storm. David Goodman reports that over the objections of environmentalists, local sheriffs, and some state leaders, the Trump administration appears to be moving ahead with border infrastructure in one of Texas' most beloved parks, Big Bend National Park. Texans were caught off guard months ago when the administration appeared poised to construct a 30-foot wall through the park, a rugged expanse of moonlight desert that is a point of pride for many in the state. After bipartisan opposition grew, the wall was removed from the federal government's border construction map. Many exhaled, believing the park, with its towering mountains and cliffs, would be spared. Then the bulldozers arrived this month. The sight of these earth-moving machines in the desert signaled something else, not a wall, but roads, lighting, forward operating bases, and barriers that stop short of a continuous wall but achieve much the same effect. The administration says it's using existing authority to secure the border. Critics say it's a workaround, a violation of the spirit of the law, and an irreversible scar on a landscape that belongs to all Americans. The fight continues in courts and in the court of public opinion. A near miss in the skies over Phoenix. Emmett Lindner reports that an air traffic controller noticed two planes, one departing, one landing, were both Flight 2482. American Airlines Flight 2482 was attempting to land from Chicago very early Friday at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. At the same time, another American Airlines flight, also with the call sign 2482, was departing. The controller quickly realized the overlap and began to identify the planes as American 2482 departure and American 2482 arrival, according to a recording of the air traffic dispatch. He managed to keep the two aircraft properly separated, and the planes touched down and took off without incident. "I've been working air traffic for 25 years, the controller said later. Never seen that. The FAA is investigating how two flights ended up with the same call sign in the same airspace at the same time. It's a rare but known risk. Airlines reuse flight numbers, and scheduling errors can create duplicates." The controller's quick thinking averted what could have been disastrous. A reminder that the margin for error in aviation is measured in seconds and in the calm voice of a professional doing their job. Now to politics, where the Democratic Party has reshaped its 2028 presidential primary calendar and put South Carolina first. Shane Goldmacher reports that the party's membership finalized the new order for the first 6 states to winnow the candidate field, pushing back Iowa and New Hampshire. Iowa and New Hampshire are out, though they may not go down without a fight. South Carolina and Nevada are in. The Democratic National Committee formally approved sweeping changes on Saturday, putting states that are more racially diverse at the front of the line. The order, South Carolina first on January 22, 2028, followed by Nevada on February 1, New Hampshire on February 8, New Mexico on February 15, Michigan on February 22, and Georgia on March 7. The order in which states vote typically plays a significant role in shaping the presidential primary, influencing both what issues are discussed and who ultimately emerges. The move reflects a party that knows its base is Black, Latino, and urban, and that the old calendar, anchored in overwhelmingly white, rural states, no longer serves it. Iowa and New Hampshire have vowed to hold their contests anyway, setting up a potential clash with the National Party. The 2028 race is still theoretical. But the map has been redrawn. In Ohio, a familiar face is mounting a comeback. At 73, Sherrod Brown is running for Senate again. He is one of the Democrats his party is counting on to retake control of the Senate. Brown's populist message has not changed for a half-century. The system reeks, he says, rigged for the wealthy and against workers. He talks about trade, about deindustrialization, about the dignity of labor, the same themes he ran on as a young state legislator, as a congressman, as a two-term senator before losing in 2024 to Bernie Moreno. Now he's back. The piece traces his career, his marriage to Pulitzer-winning columnist Connie Schultz, his ability to win in a state that has trended red. But Ohio is different now. The Democratic brand is weaker. The media environment is fragmented. Brown knows the terrain, but the terrain has shifted. His pitch, "I'm the same guy." The question, is that enough? In Massachusetts, another senator faces a different calculus. Ed Markey is 80. He's hoping that his progressive politics will save him. Jess Bidgood paints a scene, the sun hot, the crowd thinned, ceremonial shovels resting in ceremonial dirt at a groundbreaking for Green Tech Park in Worcester. Markey, treading lightly on the Arryn Park, practically levitating off the pockmarked road, asks two younger colleagues, Representative Jim McGovern and Mayor Joseph Petty, both 66, for a selfie video. We're at the groundbreaking for Green Tech Park here in Worcester. It's the dawn of a new era. By morning, the selfie had thousands of views. Markey's team knows the age issue is real. They lean into his energy, his Green New Deal advocacy, his endorsement from AOC, his viral moments. But the actuarial tables are unforgiving. The piece explores how Markey navigates the contradiction, a progressive champion whose longevity in office is both his credential and his vulnerability. He says he'll serve as long as the people want him. The people will decide. Now to business, where sports teams are selling for eye-popping prices. Tanya Ganguly reports that the deal for the Los Angeles Lakers valued the team at a record $12.5 billion, eclipsing the $10 billion paid for the franchise just last year. Not long ago you could buy an NBA team in the country's second-largest city for just $2 billion. Those days are a thing of the past. Bob Iger and Joshua Kushner announced this week they had bought control of the Lakers in a deal that priced the franchise at $12.5 billion, a record for an NBA team, and the latest in a pattern of skyrocketing sale prices for sports franchises. The Washington Commanders sold for $6.05 billion. The Phoenix Suns for $4 billion. The Denver Broncos for $4.65 billion. Is it mania or a reasonable resetting of the market? Like anything else, it's worth what someone will pay, one banker said. But the drivers are real: media rights deals exploding, legalized gambling, global fan bases, scarcity. There are only 30 NBA teams, 32 NFL teams. The Lakers, with their brand, their market, their history, are the crown jewel. The new owners are betting the next media deal will be even bigger. They may be right. Or the bubble may burst. For now, the numbers only go up. While team values soar, worker pay isn't keeping up with inflation once again. Ben Castleman reports that when prices spiked in 2021 to 22, wages failed to keep up for many workers. New research shows the pattern is repeating. Government data released this week showed consumer prices rose 3.4% in July from a year earlier, outpacing a 3.2% increase in hourly earnings over the same period. That means for the fourth month in a row, Americans' real wages, how many sandwiches, haircuts, and gallons of gas they can buy with an hour's pay, actually fell. The piece digs into the sectors, leisure and hospitality, retail, transportation, where gains have been wiped out. For higher earners, real wages are up. For the bottom half, they're down. The Federal Reserve watches this closely. If wages don't drive inflation, the case for rate cuts strengthens. But if workers fall further behind, the political pressure builds. The economy grows. The stock market hits records. And millions of Americans feel poorer. In New York, an attack at Central Synagogue rattles Jewish New Yorkers. Emma Goldberg and Maya Coleman report that Sabbath services had just begun Friday night when prayers were interrupted by a crashing sound. Shouts rang out. Congregants held their breath. A man screamed obscenities and struck a congregant. Security escorted out the assailant, later identified as 46-year-old Larry Montez. The rabbi instructed the congregation to continue singing. The service went on. But the incident at a prominent Midtown synagogue where worshippers pass through metal detectors before they pray is part of a pattern. Jews in the city contend with threats, fears, and internal divides. Anti-Semitic incidents in New York have surged since October 7, 2023. The community is on edge. The attacker had a history of mental illness and prior arrests. The questions are familiar: security, mental health, hate crime laws, the limits of protection. The singing continued. But the silence afterward was heavy. A victory for preservation in Nolita. Taylor Robinson reports that neighbors sipped iced tea and listened to harp music Saturday in the Elizabeth Street Garden to celebrate the preservation of the green space after a decades-long push to convert the site to affordable housing. The event came after developers on Thursday dropped their lawsuit against the city, which in 2025 made it more difficult to build there. On Tuesday, The Times reported that Mayor Zoran Mamdani had abandoned the plan to build affordable housing on the site of the garden. The garden has been a symbol of the fight over preservation and development, a pocket of green in a dense neighborhood, tended by volunteers, loved by residents. The affordable housing advocates say the city needs every unit. The garden's defenders say there are other sites. This week, The Garden won. The celebration was quiet, joyful, tentative, because in New York, no victory is ever final. And in the courts, the case of Luigi Mangione. Hirobi Miko reports that after nearly 2 years, Mangione finally spoke in federal court Friday, pleading guilty to 2 counts of stalking that led to the death of Brian Thompson, a healthcare executive. For nearly 10 minutes, Mangione, 28, told a federal judge how he endured years of severe pain from a broken back, the obstacles of navigating health insurance, how he witnessed others going through similar struggles. He must still be sentenced in federal court. And his lawyers are now claiming double jeopardy to get the state case dismissed before the trial starts next month. The argument, the federal plea covers the same conduct as the state murder and terrorism charges. Prosecutors say the charges are distinct, stalking versus murder. The legal battle is just beginning. The public fascination with the manifesto, the ghost gun, the United Healthcare CEO's killing, has not faded. The courtroom will decide the law. The culture has already decided the narrative. We move to arts, where dance is neither a tool nor an accessory for Madonna, it is an unwavering force in her performing life. The piece explores how Madonna put motion into music, how the dance floor saved her, then she made it big enough for everyone. From the clubs of New York to the Super Bowl halftime show, her choreography has been a language of reinvention, of control, of liberation. She doesn't just dance, she directs the dance, shapes it, weaponizes it. The article traces her collaboration with choreographers, her insistence on rigor, her ability to absorb subcultures, voguing, crumping, ballroom, and project them onto the world stage. At 66, she still rehearses for hours. The dance floor, the piece argues, is where she has always been most herself. Leo Woodall, if he must, chooses Oasis over the Beatles. Catherine Shattuck profiles the actor, one of the stars of Tony, the film about Anthony Bourdain's summer of 1975 on Cape Cod. Woodall plays Sal, the oyster shucker. He's also shooting the latest Lord of the Rings installment in New Zealand, A Childhood Dream. Liam Gallagher is the coolest frontman who's ever lived, he says. The piece is a delight, a young actor navigating sudden visibility, rooted in a working-class British upbringing, charmingly opinionated about music, movies, and the roles he wants to play. He's not trying to be a star. He's trying to do the work. The Salzburg Festival navigates uncertain times without a captain. The renowned classical music festival is at a turning point after ousting its artistic director as it prepares for a disruptive $600 million renovation project. The festival, founded in 1920, has weathered wars, scandals, and political upheavals. Now it faces a leadership vacuum and a physical transformation of its historic venues. The renovation will close the Grosses Fest Spielhaus for 2 years. The search for a new artistic director is fraught. The role demands artistic vision, fundraising prowess, and diplomatic skill. The festival's identity, elite, tradition-bound, yet seeking relevance, hangs in the balance. The music plays on. But the conductor's podium is empty. In books, the album that sparked 1,000 debates is about to turn 40. Mark Broad reviews Ashley Kahn's Days of Miracle and Wonder, which revisits the trials and triumphs of Paul Simon's Graceland. The album, released in 1986, was a commercial smash, a critical darling, and a political firestorm recorded in South Africa during the cultural boycott of apartheid. Simon collaborated with black South African musicians, bringing their sounds to a global audience. Critics accused him of exploiting them, of breaking the boycott, of cultural appropriation. Defenders said he amplified voices that the regime sought to silence. The debate has never settled. Kahn's book, Broad writes, doesn't adjudicate, it immerses. It traces the sessions, the friendships, the lawsuits, the Grammy night, the long aftermath. Graceland remains, Broad says, a cultural object that refuses to be pinned down. Love and eyes can never see, says Percy Sledge. For Broad, it's Graceland. No other cultural object has he loved so long, so deeply, so blindly. In Jersey City, Pete Gonzalez cooks elaborate meals for his fellow firefighters. Amanda Choi spent 2 days filming Engine 7. Quietly towering over a sizzling pan of chorizo hash, Gonzalez reaches into a cabinet for more black pepper, pauses to glance over the shoulder of a fellow firefighter dicing bell peppers, gives a nod of approval. This is how Gonzalez, 35, a firefighter for nearly a decade, spends most mornings during his 24-hour shifts. He's responded to emergencies across the city of nearly 300,000 residents, but he also has a second calling, feeding the house. The meals are elaborate braised short ribs, homemade gnocchi, fresh pastries. The firehouse kitchen is his domain. The crew eats well. The job is brutal. The food is care. For the rest of us, Danielle Friedman offers 6 exercises physical therapists wish everyone did to age well. Habits like sitting at a desk all day, looking down at your phone, straining to pick socks off the floor, they lead to a body that feels creaky, tight, sore. Making time to practice good movement habits keeps you limber and strong. Physical therapists see the same problems over and over. Teresa Marco, a PT in New York City, often recommends the same exercises, movements that counteract, say, going to see the Odyssey for 3 hours. The piece details the 6 shin tucks, thoracic extensions, glute bridges, dead bugs, bird dogs, and calf raises. Simple. Doable. No equipment. The goal isn't fitness. It's function. The ability to move through your life without pain. Back to Hawaii, where travelers hunkered down as Hurricane Lala approached. We've covered the storm's meteorology. Now the human side. Riley Ober describes visitors leaving accommodations early, others hunkered in hotels, the airports closing, the uncertainty. The storm prompted a scramble rebooking flights, extending stays, finding shelter. For some, it was an adventure. For others, a nightmare. The hospitality industry braces. The island waits. In Barcelona, a different rhythm. The classic bars, known as bodegas, are where locals in the Catalan capital take their rituals seriously. Vermouth and snacks, the hour before lunch, the standing at the bar, the olives, the anchovies, the potato chips, the pour from the barrel. If you know where to look, you can join them. The piece is a guide, yes, but also a portrait of a city that refuses to rush. The bodegas are shrinking, gentrification, tourism, rising rents. But the ones that remain are temples of a certain way of life. The vermouth is bitter, the company loud, the time suspended. Real estate, inside Emmy Rossum's tidy and spacious Upper East Side home. The furious actress long dreamed of returning to the neighborhood where she grew up, but with more square footage this time. The piece is a tour, the light, the books, the art, the kitchen, the view. Rossum, now a mother, has curated a space that feels both grounded and aspirational. It's a New York story, leaving, returning, making it yours. And a question for retirees, moving to Florida after retirement, is it worth it? Jill Terreri Ramos tackles the tax angle. No income tax, no tax on Social Security, pensions, IRA or 401k withdrawals. But you have to take into account all your income and costs, and your unique lifestyle preferences. Property taxes can be high. Insurance is skyrocketing. The heat is real. The distance from family matters. The calculation is personal. The answer, it depends. Fashion, Hacks comes to life in Los Angeles for one night only. Courting Emmy voters, the stars and creators of the HBO Max series got in character for Deborah Vance and Friends and Enemies Live. The piece captures the blur between show and reality, the campaign trail of awards season, the particular alchemy of a series about an aging comic and her young writer that has become a cultural touchstone. Electric Kool-Aid Acid Blue is suddenly everywhere. Annabelle Nugent reports on a color trend, not quite turquoise, not aquamarine, deeper than robin's egg, louder than cornflower. It's the Ionian Sea, David Hockney, antifreeze, mint mouthwash. It's this searing, kind of psychotic blue, says fashion writer Liana Satenstein. Searches for aqua blue dress and aquamarine dresses are spiking. The trend is nostalgic, optimistic, and some argue easier to pull off than you may think. It's on runways, on TikTok, on the streets. Color as mood. Color as rebellion. Pilates with a side of prenuptial planning. Andrew Zucker visited a class in Watermill, New York. Rows of yoga mats, women in ritzy sportswear, olive oil shots. But the instructor, Marcy Katz, is a matrimonial lawyer to New York's elite. You like a house more in Greenwich than in Scarsdale, she theorized. Well, then, all of a sudden, the rules are going to change drastically. Stretches, protein balls, financial advice. The Hamptons workout class as estate planning seminar. Only in New York. Obituaries. Bu Meng, rare survivor of the Khmer Rouge torture house Tul Sleng, dies at 85. Saved by his ability to paint, he was one of only a handful of prisoners to make it out of the brutal prison. Seth Midens writes that Bu Meng, a Cambodian painter, died Friday at his home in Pham Tre, Kandal province, about 30 miles from Phnom Penh. He was 85. The cause: complications of a stroke. Late in life, he was one of 4 living symbols of the Khmer Rouge atrocities that left 1.7 million dead between 1975 and 1979. Together with the other survivors, he testified, he remembered, he painted the faces of the lost. His art was evidence. His life was testimony. Violet Hensley dies at 109. Ozark's Fiddler made Opry debut at 99. Richard Sandomir writes that Violet Hensley, who grew up in Arkansas learning from her father how to carve and play a fiddle, and whose nearly 60-year performing career reached its peak at age 99 when she debuted at the Grand Ole Opry, died August 7 at her home in Yellville, Arkansas. She was 109. She performed old-time mountain music at the Silver Dollar City theme park in Branson, Missouri, for more than 50 years and appeared on the Beverly Hillbillies. She made a clear distinction between a fiddle and a violin. If you can read music, you play the violin. I can't read music, so I play the fiddle. She played until the end. Magazine: the charming, amusing, surprisingly low-confidence Matthew Rhys. Lulu Garcia Navarro interviews the actor, 2 Emmy nominations for leading roles in the same year, and yet. Rhys, 51, grew up in Wales, trained at RADA, struggled through Hollywood fits and starts, became Philip Jennings in The Americans, one of the great shows of the 2010s. He fell in love with co-star Kerry Russell. Sounds pretty good. But the self-doubt persists. The piece is a revelation about the gap between external success and internal calibration, about the Welsh habit of understatement, about the actor's craft as a way of disappearing into someone else so you don't have to be yourself. It's funny, tender, and disarmingly honest. Opinion. Ben Coates, guest essayist, writes that Europe's great rivers are dying. The continent is in for a shock. Climate change is beginning to tear up the old map of Europe's power and wealth. All across Europe, shipwrecks and skeletons are rising from the deep. Near Prahovo, Serbia, Nazi ships scuttled in 1944 now lie broken-backed on sandbanks. In Croatia, a 1930s cargo ship protruded from the water. On the newly exposed riverbed of the Danube in Bulgaria, what local experts say is most likely part of the skeleton of an ancient mammoth was found scattered across the sand. Much of Europe is in the middle of a severe drought. Major rivers reduced to a fraction of their usual size. The Danube, Europe's second longest river, is facing a crisis of navigation, ecology, energy, and agriculture. The old map of trade routes, of hydroelectric power, of fertile floodplains is being rewritten. The continent is not ready. Nicholas Kristof writes where the teacher is a hero. The Trump administration is squeezing struggling Americans with benefit cuts, but ordinary people are stepping up to help. The piece highlights educators who go beyond the classroom, feeding students, housing families, navigating bureaucracy. In a time of retreat by the state, the teacher becomes the safety net. It's a portrait of quiet heroism and an indictment of a society that demands it. Patty Davis, guest essayist, he tried to kill my father. Now he wants to rewrite history. John Hinckley Jr. never really goes away. After the assassination attempt on Donald Trump 2 years ago, Hinckley did an interview claiming to be a changed man, to have regrets about March 1981 when he tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. Now, before the release of a movie about the 1986 Reykjavik meeting, Hinckley is back, talking about how he put his past behind him. Davis, Reagan's daughter, writes, "This is not what contrition looks like. It's a searing, personal reckoning with the man who shattered her family, and the culture that lets him perform redemption." The Opinions Podcast: How are the Democrats' midterm dreams shaping up? Robert Siegel, E.J. Dion Jr., and Kristen Soltis Anderson discuss Democratic divisions, polling misses, Ocasio-Cortez egg freezing, the week in politics. With midterms less than 3 months away, surprising primary results and polling misses raise questions. Are Democrats moving left or becoming more focused on winning? Are both parties growing more extreme? The conversation is sharp, data-driven, and unsettled. Sharon Waxman, guest essayist, no one really wants to move from Beverly Hills to Nashville. The dream of a red state Hollywood. David Ellison, Paramount Skydance CEO, has threatened to abandon Hollywood for Tennessee, Georgia, or Texas. The backlash was immediate. The piece dissects the fantasy, the tax breaks, the politics, the logistics, the talent that won't follow. Hollywood is an ecosystem, not a headquarters. You can move the office. You can't move the culture. The editorial board: Republicans are trying to hide these healthcare cuts. Republicans are taking deliberate steps to make healthcare less affordable. One of the federal government's great achievements this century, making health insurance affordable to millions more Americans. In 2010, nearly 18% of people under 65 lacked insurance. By 2024, the rate had fallen below 10%, thanks to the ACA and later legislation. President Trump and congressional Republicans are working to dismantle that achievement. They've effectively cut subsidies for the ACA's marketplaces, making it harder for people who don't receive insurance through work to afford coverage. They're pushing work requirements for Medicaid that will disenroll eligible people. They're shortening enrollment periods. They're cutting outreach funding. The cuts are hidden in technical rule changes, in budget reconciliation fine print, in the bureaucratic shadows. The editorial board calls it out. This is deliberate. This is cruel. This will hurt people. Finally, Jamel Bouie, Trump is in a fantasy land of his own making. Bouie has been reading Regime Change, Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, the recent volume from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan on the first year of Trump's second term. It makes for compelling, often shocking reading. Bouie looks for what it tells us about how the president relates to the office itself. Is there a particular way he manages the White House? Attends to the machinery of government? The portrait that emerges, a president untethered from constraint, surrounded by enablers, operating in a reality of his own construction. The question Bouie poses: what happens when the fantasy collides with an external crisis, a pandemic, a financial crash, a war? The system may not hold. The fantasy may not break. The collision is coming. That's your briefing for August 16, 2026. 40 stories. One world. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and take care of each other. This has been today's headlines from the New York Times.